Most people think of Iraq as a place defined by war, but thousands of years ago, this land was the most advanced place on Earth. Here, humans built the first cities, created the first writing system, and established some of the first laws in human history. This was Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, and the story of Iraq is not just a story of war. It's a story of rise, collapse, and possibly rebuilding again. Long before modern nations existed, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers gave rise to something revolutionary: the first cities. The people who built them were called the Sumerians. Around 3500 BC, they created cities like Uruk, and Lagash. For the first time in history, large numbers of people lived together in organized urban societies, and from these cities came one of humanity's greatest inventions: writing. The Sumerians developed cuneiform, pressing wedge-shaped symbols into clay tablets. This allowed humans to record trade, laws, stories, history. Civilization itself had begun. Around 1800 BC, a powerful king named Hammurabi united much of Mesopotamia. His most famous achievement? One of the earliest written legal systems in history, the Code of Hammurabi. Carved into stone, it contained nearly 300 laws governing society. Its famous principle became legendary: an eye for an eye. For the first time, rulers were establishing written law rather than arbitrary power. Babylon became one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world. But Hammurabi's Babylon was just the beginning. Over 1,000 years later, Babylon would rise again. In 605 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar II took power. Under his rule, Babylon became one of the most magnificent cities ever built. He constructed massive walls that stretched for miles, built the legendary Ishtar Gate, covered in brilliant blue tiles, and according to ancient accounts, created the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. These terraced gardens supposedly rose high above the city, filled with exotic plants and trees, though historians still debate whether they actually existed. During this time, Nebuchadnezzar also conquered Jerusalem. He destroyed Solomon's temple and forced thousands of Jews into exile in Babylon. This event, known as the Babylonian captivity, became one of the most important moments in Jewish history. But Babylon's glory didn't last. In 539 BC, the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great conquered the city. Mesopotamia would once again change hands. But Mesopotamia's story was far from peaceful. Centuries earlier, a new empire had risen from northern Mesopotamia, the Assyrians. They built what many historians consider the first true military empire. Their armies used iron weapons, siege warfare, organized military strategy. At their height, the Assyrian Empire controlled land from Egypt to Persia. Their capital city, Nineveh, was one of the largest cities in the world, but their rule was also notoriously brutal. Eventually, a coalition of enemies destroyed the Assyrian Empire in 612 BC. Mesopotamia would once again change hands. After the fall of Babylon and Assyria, the region became part of larger empires. First came the Persian Empire, one of the greatest empires of the ancient world. Then in 331 BC, everything changed. Alexander the Great conquered Mesopotamia during his campaign across the Persian Empire. After his death, the region passed between multiple rulers, including the Seleucid Greeks, the Parthians, and later the Romans. For centuries, Mesopotamia was the battleground between great empires. But its next chapter would bring something extraordinary. The next transformation of Mesopotamia didn't come from Persia or Greece or Rome. It came from the Arabian Peninsula. In the early 600s, a new religion had emerged, Islam. Within a single century, it would completely reshape the Middle East. By the early 600s, Mesopotamia was no longer the center of a great empire. Instead, it was caught between two exhausted superpowers, the Byzantine Empire, the Persian Empire. After decades of brutal war between them, both empires were weakened. At that exact moment, a new religious movement emerged in the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. Founded by the self-proclaimed Prophet Muhammad in the city of Mecca, the religion spread rapidly across Arabia. After Muhammad's death in 632 AD, Muslim armies began expanding beyond Arabia. Within just a few decades, they conquered vast territories. One of the most important victories came in 637 AD when Muslim forces defeated the Persian Empire in Mesopotamia. The region that is now Iraq soon became part of the early Islamic state known as the Rashidun Caliphate. Over time, the population gradually converted to Islam. This process didn't happen overnight. It took centuries, and conversion was influenced by several factors: political power shifting to Muslim rulers, economic incentives for conversion, cultural and social integration into new Islamic society. By around the 10th century, Islam had become the dominant religion across much of Iraq. Over the next centuries, Islam spread throughout the region. Arabic culture, language, and religion gradually reshaped Mesopotamia, and soon the region would become the center of one of the greatest intellectual periods in human history, the Islamic Golden Age. In the 8th century, a new empire emerged, the Abbasid Caliphate. They built their capital in a new city, Baghdad. For several centuries, Baghdad became the intellectual capital of the world. At the famous House of Wisdom, scholars translated and preserved knowledge from Greece, Persia, India. They advanced fields like mathematics, astronomy, medicine, engineering. During Europe's Dark Ages, Baghdad was one of the most advanced cities on earth. But in 1258, disaster struck. In 1258, Mongol armies led by Hulagu Khan attacked Baghdad. The city was devastated. Libraries were destroyed. Scholars were killed. Some accounts say the Tigris River ran black with ink from destroyed books. The Mongol invasion ended Baghdad's golden age and devastated the region. For centuries afterward, the land that once led the world fell into decline. Many ask, why did the Middle East become mostly Muslim? This is one of the most important historical questions. Several key factors explain it. 1. Military conquest. Early Islamic armies expanded rapidly across the Middle East, North Africa, and Persia. Within about 100 years, Islamic rule stretched from Spain to India. 2. Gradual cultural conversion. In many regions, populations remained Christian, Jewish, or Zoroastrian for generations before converting. Conversion often happens slowly over centuries. 3. Economic incentives. Non-Muslims under Islamic rule paid a special tax known as jizya, while Muslims did not. This created incentives for conversion. 4. Cultural integration. Arabic language, Islamic law, and political leadership gradually shaped society. Over time, Islam became the dominant cultural identity across much of the Middle East. By the 1500s, the region became part of the Ottoman Empire. For nearly 400 years, Mesopotamia was governed from Istanbul. During that time, the region remained relatively quiet, but also far from its former glory. Then World War I changed everything. After the Ottoman Empire collapsed in World War I, the British took control of the region. They created a new nation, Iraq. The borders combined three different Ottoman provinces: Basra, Baghdad, and Mosul. In 1921, the British installed King Faisal I as ruler, but the British didn't create Iraq out of generosity. They wanted control of something valuable: oil. In 1927, massive oil reserves were discovered near Kirkuk in northern Iraq, one of the largest oil fields ever found. Suddenly, this newly created nation sat on top of some of the world's most valuable resources. Britain maintained control of Iraq's oil through the Iraq Petroleum Company. For decades, foreign companies extracted Iraq's oil while most Iraqis remained poor. This created deep resentment, and it would fuel the political upheavals to come. But the new country contained deep ethnic and religious divisions. Iraq was roughly 60% Shia Muslim, mostly in the south, 20% Sunni Muslim, mostly in the center, and 20% Kurdish, mostly in the north. The Shia were the majority, but under Ottoman rule, Sunnis had held most of the power. The Kurds, meanwhile, wanted their own independent state. Britain had drawn borders that forced these groups together. Groups with different languages, different religious traditions, and different political goals. These tensions would shape Iraq's future, and they continue to shape it today. Iraq gained formal independence from Britain in 1932, but the monarchy installed by the British remained unpopular. Many Iraqis saw the king as a British puppet, and resentment grew over foreign control of Iraq's oil wealth. On July 14, 1958, everything changed. Military officers led by Abdul Karim Qasim staged a coup. They overthrew the monarchy, killed King Faisal II and much of the royal family, and declared Iraq a republic. The 1958 revolution marked the end of monarchical rule, but it also began decades of political instability. Coups, assassinations, and power struggles became common. In 1968, the Ba'ath Party seized power, and 11 years later, one of its members would become the most famous leader in Iraq's modern history, Saddam Hussein. In 1979, Saddam Hussein became president. His rule was authoritarian and brutal. He used secret police, torture, and execution to eliminate any opposition. Entire families could disappear for criticizing the government. But he also invested heavily in infrastructure, education, and healthcare. Iraq's literacy rate improved dramatically, and for a time, Iraq became one of the most developed nations in the Middle East. Saddam's government was secular. He suppressed religious extremism and maintained tight control through fear and force. Iraq became a regional power, but that power came at a terrible cost. Then came decades of conflict. In 1980, Saddam invaded Iran. The Iran-Iraq War lasted 8 years. Over 1 million people died. Iraq used chemical weapons. The war ended in stalemate, with both countries devastated. Then in 1990, Saddam invaded Kuwait, claiming it as Iraqi territory. The United States led a coalition that drove Iraqi forces out in 1991. This was the Gulf War. Afterward, international sanctions crippled Iraq's economy. Ordinary Iraqis suffered while Saddam remained in power. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. The official reason was weapons of mass destruction. Those weapons were never found. The invasion removed Saddam Hussein from power, but it also triggered years of chaos. Sectarian violence between Sunnis and Shias exploded. Thousands of Iraqis died in bombings and attacks. The country's infrastructure collapsed, and a power vacuum emerged. By 2014, a new terror emerged: ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. They exploited the chaos and sectarian divisions left by the invasion. In June 2014, ISIS captured Mosul, Iraq's second largest city. At their peak, they controlled nearly a third of Iraq. They imposed brutal rule, executing anyone who opposed them, destroying ancient historical sites. It took years of fighting to defeat them. Iraqi forces, backed by U.S. air support, finally retook Mosul in 2017. But the cost was enormous. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced, and the trauma of ISIS rule still affects Iraq today. Today, Iraq is still rebuilding. After decades of war, the country faces enormous challenges: political instability, corruption, infrastructure damage, sectarian tensions that haven't healed. But Iraq also has major advantages: one of the world's largest oil reserves, a young population, ancient cultural heritage, a growing movement demanding real democracy and reform. In 2019 and 2020, massive protests erupted across Iraq. Young Iraqis demanded an end to corruption, better services, and real representation. They're tired of sectarian politics. They want a future, not just survival. The land where civilization began may still have another chapter ahead. 5,000 years ago, this land created cities, writing, and law. It became the center of knowledge during the Islamic Golden Age. Then it suffered centuries of destruction and conflict. And the story of Iraq is one of the most dramatic in human history. And today, that story is still being written by Iraqis themselves. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to our channel for other videos. We offer a wide variety of entertainment and hope you'll like it. Thank you, and God bless you all.